Going to the Rude Guest Hotline right now to talk to our friend, Mr. John Keim. John was at OTAs yesterday watching Jaden Daniels slinging around and Deebo Samuel. Not a lot of work for the big fellas in the trenches, but the skill position guys, you get to see a decent look. Johnny, what's up, bud?
What's up, guys? How are you?
What up, man?
Howard.
Thank you for making time, dude. I'm curious, did anything stand out to you at all yesterday?
Yes, there was probably the best thing I saw was this like middle-aged man walking out of the field talking to the returners. That's what I love.
Very casual use of middle age.
I actually, in all seriousness, I like that because you were out there talking to like Jalen Lane and KJ Osborne for a few minutes, man. And like, I just think that's helpful. So I actually like that. And I like that Dan Quinn did that. But the other stuff that I liked was watching the young corners like Mike Samerstill and Trey Amos. I felt like when I was able to watch them, like Samerstill looked really good inside, but I really like what I saw from Amos. And I know there's a long way to go. It's just a first impression, but there's a smoothness to him, and it seems like he understands well how to play man coverage. You know, with the eyes, the footwork, the one-handed jab, like the jam. So like all that stuff. And I felt like he moves well out there. So like those are some of the little things that kind of jumped out to me with them.
Yeah, I noticed that about Trey as well. Like some young guys walk in and they try to act like they are confident, and the other guys, they just confident. He's very confident. Right.
And like the other thing is there was one, he breaks well on the ball, turns with just, there's an easiness to his game. And, I liked him before the draft, and just the first impression going against some veteran receivers, it was good. And there was, how it is too with some of the young corners we've seen in the past, not just here, but elsewhere, they get grabby, right? Like I remember when Rashad Freeland was here, very grabby. Benjamin St. Juste, grabby. And that stuff carries over to that stuff. I almost said a different word, but that stuff carries over into games. And like you didn't see that with him. Yeah. You're not seeing him grabbing up around the shoulder pads by getting beat. Like it was just good to see, and I think he's going to be a help.
Dude, I love just the length.
Yeah.
The length you notice just walking and talking with the guy. Talking with our friend John Keim here on the Rude Guest Hotline. You can give him a follow at John_Keim, Keim. Check out the John Keim report or read all of his work on ESPN.com. I thought the quote that stood out to me most yesterday, there were a lot of guys talked. It was clearly everybody's in good spirits. If you're not in good spirits in May at OTAs, you got big problems. But I thought when Cliff Kingsbury said, I know that I'm going to have guys mad they're not getting the ball enough. I'll probably get cussed out. And he's like, I'd rather get cussed out by good players wanting the football than just have bad players. I love that attitude.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Only one football.
Right. And this too. If they're winning, there's less cussing because, you tend to understand more, right? Like, you're willing to, okay, I'll sacrifice this if we're winning. But if we're not, then that's when it gets even louder. But, here's the other thing. This is, especially in this day, like if you're Deebo Samuel, you can get paid after this year if you have a really good year, and Terry's looking for an extension. I assume he'll have one before camp, but to kind of mitigate that. But guys want to get paid, and so it matters to them. But I also would say there will always be people, guys like Deebo, guys like Terry, like they want the ball because they know they can do something with it, right? But I think like one of the things that's been good here, even like with Terry, is never a guy that gets in. He knows he needs the ball, right? But he's not when Deshaun and Pierre were here, they might get a little bit more upset, right? I think Terry handles it better. And I don't know how Deebo will do it. Again, I'm sure he's going to want the ball because he knows what he can do. But like the more talent you have, Noah Brown's going to want the ball. And so I think, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, they better care about winning. That's all I care about.
Yeah, and so that's one thing I felt like the group last year, especially in the receiver room, especially guys like Zacchaeus, whom I really liked, but his focus was on, what's my role today, right? And what's my role on this play or today? And I always kind of go back to the Bengals game where his role was not very big at all. And yet he was always the first one off the bench, congratulating guys coming off and as happy as anybody after that game. And then other games, they needed him more and he produced. So that speaks to a different level. You talk about the culture or whatever, but that speaks to a different level of selflessness. And I think that also helps. But, if you have really good players and they don't want the ball, then to me there's an issue.
You got a problem there.
Yeah, but if you're winning, you'll take a little bit less if you see if you're Terry, but you see Deebo Samuel making big plays, or vice versa. Okay, I didn't get the ball here, but 17 just got 40 yards. What am I going to say?
Right.
So that matters too.
Totally. I think having the right understanding and the right approach is
vital.
Dude, I think you really see it. And we've heard this stuff. And a lot of times I'm pretty hesitant to buy into any of it. But the camaraderie, the brotherhood, just the vibes, whatever you want to call the energy they have going is really working in Ashburn right now.
And for sure. And you saw it last year. During this time is when you started to see it. You didn't know. I just remember thinking at the time, boy, it's too bad they're not further along their development because they seem like a really tight team, and really tight teams do really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's you kind of underestimated the impact of Jaden Daniels and then a lot of other factors, right? So, it obviously helps. And we saw it. I just remember last year, Andrew Wiley telling us, I think this I don't remember if it was OTAs late or early or one of the mini camps, but just talking about how he came over to talk to the media an hour or two after, or an hour and a half after practice. It was a longer time, and so not everybody was still there. But what he was saying is a lot of players were still in the locker room. They didn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, when they want to hang around and be around one another, that's pretty good. And I think they have a lot of stuff going on in the building right now. Locker rooms being renovated. They're having to basically change and shower in the bubble, right?
Yeah.
It's not conducive to happy campers. And yet, doesn't sound like there's a lot of complaining about that because, first of all, they know the locker room's being renovated. It's temporary.
Yeah.
But secondly, it's I think, because they actually like being out there and around one another, I think that really softens the blow. But it's also it's the kind of guys it's the kind of guys you're bringing in. They're pros, I think that really matters.
Totally.
I think the fact that they see also, let's be real, this damn owner cares about us. This front office, sure. They are basically trying to give us everything we need. We may as well go out there and get it done. And I say it all the time, Jay, about that when you get a team that seems like a family, they don't want to let their brother down. You get those teams that everybody just have their little cliques, they can give a damn about the other person.
Listen, that's the one thing I always remember hearing about when, this, playing for Joe Gibbs the first time around especially,
mm-hmm.
and just what you would hear from guys who played in that era is the Hogs, I didn't want to let Russ Grimm down. I didn't want to let Bostic down, the guy next to me. Your position group, those guys, and the camaraderie that was fostered was unique and rare. And that's why I said, when I saw it last year around this time, again, it's it's too bad it might be wasted, and it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And because you saw what they did, and it's hard to quantify, when does that matter? Where does that matter? Well, I think it's the preparation you put in, and holding one another to hey, you know what? You're not putting in the work that you need to put in to keep up with this group, right? And it's the way you can talk to someone else in the room. And then I want to do my work because, the guy next to me is doing his work, so I've got to keep up with that.
Yep.
And I think like that does go a long way. And it's, you get late in games and you can rely and trust the person next to you. And I think it matters. Like how many wins it led to, I don't know, but I think it led to a 12-5 season. I mean, clearly Jaden Daniels is really good, but he could have been really good and they could have been 9-8 just as easily.
Yep.
Dude, I also think as much as like, it's like they're just playing at a super hot craps table and they've got bets on the 6 and the 8 and it just keeps coming up 6 and 8 because I think AP was a home run. I think there were legitimate questions, but Dan Quinn ended up being the absolute right guy. And then you draft Jaden Daniels, who has all the physical tools, but what we've gotten to know in the year since he's been here is his demeanor and just his work ethic and just who he is off the field.
Phenomenal.
It's unbelievable, man.
Well, that's where like, even again, I go back to last year because it's that first impression of this entire situation has carried through. And the first impression with him is like, yeah, we know he's good on the field. We know, what the arm talent is. You saw it in college. You saw the athleticism in college. But what you didn't know about him was the work, or at least to the level that we learned after he got here. Like you knew that he did stuff because throughout the process, talking to people else, talking to people who coached him, whatever, like you knew that, okay, this guy works, but you didn't realize how much and how much as like people close to him call him a football nerd and how much and that in a very good way. And, because the film study he does and like how much you're not seeing him on Instagram posting pictures of him dragging tires around uphill. You know what I mean? Like, because that
sounds
not
so
how
specific, John.
Oh, it's very specific. And, but because like when you're posting pictures of yourself and watching film isn't as, like, ooh, look at that, right?
But that's what you're supposed to be watching damn film.
Yeah, right. But he does all that. So when you hear that, like to me, the best stuff with him last year, and again, it's carried through, is what you heard and what you from others more so than even what you saw, because what you heard was he's getting here at 5:30, 5:45. It's not performative. He's there working, doing the walkthroughs 3 days a week with Tavita and Cliff Kingsbury during the season at 6 a.m. Right? Like that kind of stuff is why he's going that people can sit there and say like, why will he have a long career? Because of that. Yeah. Like that's why. And because the talent is what it is. But, I remember talking to somebody several years ago talking about another quarterback. It's like, well, he's got a lot of talent. He goes, well, what does that mean? Like they all have talent. So what separates those from the others, and what separates Jaden from others is all the other stuff he puts in. He puts in the requisite amount of work. If I had Logan Paulson said this to me one time, I was like, you can't, doing all that doesn't guarantee you're going to be great, but you can't be great without doing that.
There you go. And I think what happens is that, he doesn't just mess around with it. That's his, just like a diet. They say, don't go on a diet, have a lifestyle change. Yeah. Football is his life. That's what he does. I saw a post he posted and he told his mama happy birthday. You know what I mean? Everybody else posted crap.
He's, in the Terminator movies, how the Terminator is sent back in time with one sole focus, right? Mm-hmm. Jaden Daniels is a football Terminator. Like football is his sole focus, man.
Well, look at how happy
and that's how he's supposed to be.
Right.
Look how happy he is when he's on the field. Like watching him compete, like that's what he likes to do. And he even called himself yesterday, like he's like some people get in there that you start chasing fame and you start chasing other things. And that's one of the things he talked about yesterday is like, he's an introvert. Like he
doesn't like going out.
Like he's as happy just kind of sitting at home watching film. Like, like that's what it is. But that's really, really good for this franchise because it's why, like, I mean, I don't know, like that's the number one thing you can build on with him. And because the other stuff is great, but if you didn't have that, there's a ceiling as to what you could do.
Yep.
Talking with John Keim here.
100%.
Check out the John Keim report. Read his work on ESPN.com. Of course, Keim joins us via the Rude Guest Hotline. Johnny B and I have talked about it at length both yesterday and today. These are voluntary practices. You did have 3 veteran players miss yesterday: Lattimore, Tunsil, and McLaurin. I'm super dismissive of McLaurin and even Tunsil. The Lattimore one I find a little more curious. I'm wondering where you land on all of it.
Yeah, well, first of all, with McLaurin, this is what he did the last time. Well, when he was looking for an extension the last time, he missed OTA practices, was there at the mandatory mini camps. And so, he's going to handle his business, right? And Dan Quinn talked about what a great offseason he had because he had been here up until last week. And he knows the offense. You know what he's going to, you know that very few guys are out there doing more than what he's doing to better his game. Like every year, the question after the season is, okay, what is it that you're going to work on this offseason to get better? Because he always has an answer and he always goes and attacks it. Mm-hmm. So, you don't like this one. I remember when Deshaun Jackson was here and missed OTAs all the time. And yet he'd come into the season, he's going to get 50 some catches, 8 to 10 touchdowns, and be the exact, every year the same guy because they come into shape. He can't, to play about. With Tunsil, this is what, my understanding is like he missed these in Houston. Okay. You obviously would want guys here to build up like what we talked about earlier, that camaraderie. Like this is when you do that. And I know he's been here for some of the stuff, but this is when you do that. So you can't just say it's important and then dismiss it if someone's not showing up. But, we know the talent level. We know he's really good. We'll see. And I think with Lattimore, somebody asked me this on a YouTube page or something like that, where like, what concerns you have with this? Like, well, my concerns remain the same, whether he's here or not. Is he going to stay healthy and what level can he play at? And I don't think we're going to get that answer right now. Yeah. Right. So if he were here doing it, if he's looking great, okay, the question still remains, can he do it in the fall and will he be healthy? Because those are the two big questions that we all have about him right now.
Yep.
As long as he comes into camp, I think the mandatory stuff you've got to be here for. Yeah. As long as you're doing your stuff there and, et cetera. I think the other thing that helps is this is what we were talking about earlier, is a very close team. And, I think Dan Quinn talks a lot about getting to know guys on a personal level and trying to connect with them that way rather than just football and trying to understand like what makes them tick, et cetera. And I think like you would think that mitigates some of this. I don't know, but I don't know. The other thing is too, with the corner, it's definitely a solitary position.
Yeah.
Although one thing that they did talk about was his adjustment to the defense. Well, this is a time where you can get kind of more adjusted to the defense. But again, my concern with him would still be the same if he were here or not. What is his health and where's his level? Yeah,
I'm with you on
that. If he stays healthy, he'll be good, I think.
Yep. Until they make that thing mandatory all the time, I'm not really caring.
Johnny,
it's voluntary, man. Yeah.
They set it up for these types of things to happen, but
you know what the league does? They get a lot of coverage.
Yeah,
that's all they care about.
They know what they're doing. Keim, thank you for the time, dude.
All right,
always.
Jay.
Thanks, guys.
Be cool, man.
All right. That is our friend John Keim on the Rude Guest Hotline. You can give him a follow at John_Keim, Keim.